But there's the weight.
Oh wow.
So they're weighted.
They're lead beads, yeah.
Lead beads.
You've got to do a whole piece on this now. I had no idea that this was such a thing.
Do you want me to read another bit? It's not in the film.
And they've got bits of writing on them.
To have a go now.
Yeah, let's pass it around.
You girls are crazy.
Althea, you invited us.
I didn't think it was going to be anarchic.
It's one of those sensory shops. Yeah.
They're good, aren't
Like a wedge cushion and those, but not in such nice
Not
silky.
in that silky,
Yeah.
From Preservation Equipment Limited.
Oh, that's what Pell is.
I promise we didn't give her. Do you want a sip of coffee, Rita?
I'm getting some water.
When I unrolled the scroll, it was originally set up on a table in the Tate, and then the artists sort of were directed to just sit around it.
Yeah, it's like a historical document, isn't it?
Yes!
It's a historical document of the kind of 70s, 80s, 90s. Women and fundamentalism. It was like women and the kind of publications of the time. It was exhibitions, it was meetings and black women artists about coming together, about our experiences politically as women. And lack of space as well.
Oh, totally about lack of space. But really, there was lots of conversations about how people managed to survive. There was lots of talk about still being able to sign on in those days.
It's interesting because after doing this, things really brought women together in a kind of international way, because there were so many people from so many backgrounds all talking about their experiences and their connections as well to where they are at the moment, like you're saying. Yeah.
That's true, actually. There were people there who hadn't seen each other for years.
Yes,
and would kind of walk in and go, oh, you're here. And I know that has triggered sort of ongoing conversations and projects since that have come out, just because we created a space in which people could come and share their sort of experiences, but also talk about, what they might be doing going forward.
I think it was really important that it was structured, though, in the way that you did it, Sarah, because things like magazine, exhibition, publication, meeting, and then because we didn't want people to kind of see themselves as isolated and just talk about their own trajectories in too much detail. It really, there was something different that was brought out because we were trying to trace a kind of landscape of connections and networks and things like subsidized housing or just being able to squat, the things that really were enabling in a way that, everybody kept saying that how young artists survive now is a completely different world, really. So,
having the opportunity to go through your archive and the rest, it's like a two-way conversation. We're learning from these artists that are some living, some dead, and we're learning from them, and then from them, I should say, and we're taking on the methods that they used into what we do. I mean, you said yourself that when I'm assisting you, I'm telling you what don't do that, I'm like quality control and stuff like that. But when you go back to Woki and you look at that archive, that is quality control. We're learning, we've learnt from you so much.
Literally, there was a question that one of my tutors asked me, which was, why do you think that there have been women writers, but not women artists. Do you think it's because they didn't have studios and stuff like that? So we would be presented with this false knowledge as if it was fact. And at the same time, of course, feminist art historians were doing loads of work to uncover the fact that this had been a wipeout. We were talking about the 1970s. You didn't even know that the photographs printed in the 1970s were all going to turn blue and yellow and faded and everything else. We didn't have that sense of fading. We just had the sense of now.
Oh, I see. Oh, how did I miss this completely? I don't remember this at all.
You had other things to do. It might have been in the summer when you were away. I don't remember.
I don't remember this at all.
I'm not here to promote people.
Something new that I've never seen. I don't know how.
I know.
It's just constantly unfolding, isn't it?
I
That's why
know.
I like coming to do these things. There's always something different. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
What? So Catherine
did you
doesn't.
see this when it was up then? When it was...
Her current work, yeah, it's all the
Oh, it's so good. Did you come to that day that Holly organised about gossip in the archive, and it had Kate Eichhorn speaking in Deptford Town Hall? Might have been before you. I don't know.
Nancy Azara, Sylvia Barkley, Alice Baker, Harriet Backer, Ruth Bader Gilbert, Enid Bagnold, Alison Bailey Smith, Nancy Bailey, Suyata Rajai, Carol Baker, Jo Baker, Mary Baker, Vivian Baker, Wilhelmina Baldwin, Julia Ball, Morag Ballard, Badget Bowrow, Louis Band, Leslie Banks, Banshee, Alexandra Beretza, Garen Barber, Claire Barkley, Linda Baron Stanley, Dale Deborah Barker, Sally Barker, Gillian Barlow, Mary Barnard, Maggie Barnes, Karen Barnett, Paola Barone, Anne Barrow, Christina Barrow, Monica Barrow, Lindsay Bartholomew, Glenys Barton, Gabrielle Bash, Vera Bassett, Wendy Bateman, Mary Bates, Ruth Batten.
From my point of view, the Slide Library was an institution before I came to it. And I came to it as a volunteer and very much as a newbie. I started volunteering when I moved to London, and that would be 1989, late 1989. And by 1990, I was employed part-time to help with the admin. And from that point onwards, I ended up doing just about every other job that needed to be done in this very busy organization, which was busy not just because it was collecting slides and running a kind of membership. This was how the organization came to sustain itself. But it was also publishing. It was publishing a magazine, and at that point it was a bi-monthly magazine called the Women Artists Slide Library Journal, and that evolved into the Women's Art magazine, and then it became Make, the Magazine of Women's Art. And so this, and around this publication, other publications came out of it, like in 2000, we did a book on Estonian artists called, let me see, Private Views, Spaces in Gender and Contemporary Art from Britain and Estonia. This was edited by Angela Dramitikaki, Pam Skelton, Mari Tralla. And so there's just a couple of books that have been published by the Women's Art Library and then distributed by IB Tauris.
the satisfaction you get of making art is in the making of it. And I think in tapping into this resource and seeing what these women do when they were making their work without thinking of whether it's going to be sold or not, it's a very complex space, and it's really worth investigating because there's so much that goes into it. And when I was making that work, I never thought of it as being sold. I was really excited of the next brush stroke and what is going to happen and the end result. I didn't think of anything else.
Did you feel a kind of, when you were saying before about not wanting to look in the boxes but just having a sense that that was all there, did that environment give you the confidence to make those marks in a way that other places wouldn't?
I think it was just being in this space, in this quiet space, and knowing that a lot of these artists, a lot of them who are no longer here, but they are here because their works are here, and their words are in these boxes talking to me or talking in a way, even though I don't know what they are, but I can feel them bubbling up under the surface.
That's amazing.
Thinking about it,
yeah.
I know now I'm getting kind of chills, but I think that was the inspiration. I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to know of their presence. It's like having the presence of lots of women walking with you and not seeing them, but you know they are there. It's the same thing you feel about your mom or your grandmom who is no longer, but they are here.
Yeah.
And I do believe there are parallel worlds that surround us and walk with us. And sometimes artists do tap into this parallel world and they find things which are strange, because I find my drawings really strange. I don't know where they come from. They don't come from my conscious self. So it has to be from an unconscious, another world that maybe I step into it for a moment, like a river, you step into it for a moment and then you come out of it.
I don't see it as a complete archive, and you're very interactive with us. So if I say my students want to work on this artist or this topic, usually, Althea, you're continuously a researcher, and you're always bringing new research in, new collections. So I do see it as an evolving archive, and you don't have a hierarchy in this archive. You won't prioritise certain kind of, I don't know, grade A-listers artists over others. You do quite the opposite, in fact. So, yeah, I don't see it as an archive I'm here to judge. It's an archive I'm here to work with and to explore and expand and take it into different directions. So, yeah, to bring my own life and our own thinking into it. But at the same time, you're always responsive to that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think because of that, there's a really interesting energy that both material and you bring to this, and having this special collections on a university site, and the importance that this actual space has of keeping that kind of like special, magical. Someone said magical earlier. I thought that was great. This magicalness of this space, of that when you do walk in here, you are leaving this kind of corporate, this kind of very marketized, individualized way of research. I'm thinking like the difference it makes when there's a table full of zines or a table full of things for us to touch, or like all the overflowing magazines, all that kind of really important work. I think that's what keeps this energy so interesting, and at least for me as a researcher in this space, why I also want to bring my students in now and be like, this is so many things it could be, like, as opposed to just what we think of as the importance of an archival material, or the archivist, right? There's so many different ways of doing this. I think this space really taps into in a really wonderful, generous, magical kind of way.
So actually responding to existing artwork that you felt was valued and knowledgeable. And this work was very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Because it allowed me to play.
So I love this box that was given to me by Nina Hertel, because she's part of this group, and it's a group based in Mexico, I think Mexico City. And it's a queer feminist artist group. I don't know anything about tarot cards. Do you know how to do it?
In 2014, when I got breast cancer, after I was treated for that, and I wanted to make work around the lack of visibility of women who'd chosen not to have reconstruction post-mastectomy, that I came to Althea with a plan for a project which would use the kind of dialoguing with the archive and finding out artists who I thought might be interesting ways of finding new ways of representation. I did a single-breasted life modelling monologue where I performed for a group of women. So it was a women-only safe space facilitated by another artist, Esther Bunting. And I performed the monologue while people did life drawings of me, and that collection of drawings became part of the archive. And then in the second half, anyone who wanted to life model alongside me could join in. And so there was a woman with MS who'd got her stick, and there were people who had all kinds of different concerns about their body and their representation who were able to enjoy that space too. So it was an incredibly it was a safe space to explore that, and it felt like you say, it felt like the kind of right context to be making work like that in.
Yeah.
So I did bring out the box of Tracy Emin and Lucy X Aqua, who do exist on top of each other. It's almost as if they share a room or a flat. And I think what happens with such artists is that very few people will know who Lucy X Aqua is. And everybody knows who Tracy Emin is. And I love the fact that they're next to each other, and their boxes, what's inside is completely different. So if you explore and think about the archive box as being this, what we're all calling the carrier bag, Ursula K. Le Guin's wonderful sort of analogy of the carrier bag of knowledge, these two artists are represented in such different ways that do reflect on their careers, but also bring out something new to how we see maybe our own practice, actually, and as well as theirs. So in Tracy Emin's box, there is it's just heavy with press cuttings. It's the Women's Art Library, in addition to this slide collection, has this kind of vast and wonderful kind of row and row of paper, what we call vertical artist files. They're not vertical, they're horizontal, but they're in hanging files. It's all organized by names. And so what you're confronted when you look in the collection itself in the back, you're confronted with what Clare Gasson actually picked up and performed, i.e. it's name after name after name. And there's something quite compulsive about all these names. People do start to search for their friends and family, but also the well-known names do kind of pop out at you, but they're always in this context, sort of packed up with names of artists who have a file, because for many years we, in addition to being sent press releases from galleries wanting to have reviews in the magazine and be in touch, we also had a subscription to a press cutting agency, and a press cutting agency that is being told to cut out any kind of article that features women in art or women artists is going to make its money, because you pay per piece, by cutting out all sorts of small articles out of any kind of sort of provincial newspaper, not listings that you didn't get paid for doing listings, but anyway, these tiny little things that were often somebody maybe showing some paintings in a library lobby in a remote town in Scotland. And so there is this, within those paper files, a fantastic kind of snapshot of how women artists or women in art sort of appear in the broad media, paper media, newsprint, between, say, late 1980s to when we stopped the subscription, pretty much in the mid-90s.
Ethel Gaben, Krista Gade, Ingrid Geyer, Verity Gage.
Performers, a lot of them were actually madrigal singers, so they have an enormous amount of stamina. They're just incredible. So we had this set of instructions that took us through this composition, and so the instructions are on the scores, and they are actually very specific to each performer. So that's why Althea has most of the scores. You should have all of them, you know.
We as a group were going through the archives and trying to decide, well, what should we focus on? And I remember at the end of the day one day, I'd spent way too long in the space, but we had a conversation at the end of the day, and you had spoken to me about Woki, and you had said that it was an important archive, but it had been untouched for such a long time.
That one. That was at the Metropolitan. And as a child, well, young 13, 14-year-old, I used to spend a lot of time at the Metropolitan. I used to love this painting. And it was attributed to David. And it never occurred to me that it was a woman artist that painted it.
Constance Marie Charpentier.
Even when I would see a woman painting, it never occurred to me that it was her painting, because it was so conditioned to think that us as muses as opposed to makers. Well, I mean, for me, coming from a whole nother generation of women artists, and as I say, Jo Spence, Julian Enner were older than me, but we were still part of that the 70s, 80s feminism and the rediscovering of books like Old Mistresses and all that academic work that had been done on the research of women artists that almost had to re-emerge from the suffragettes, and also looking at the way women worked. So it's within the Women's Work or Judy Chicago or the Brixton Art Gallery and other women's collectives that worked together but found a way of that way of working together but working separately and respecting each other's practice, but also understanding that there is strength in working collectively, and that a different kind of ownership emerges from those processes, and it doesn't have to be patriarchy. It doesn't have to be linear. You can include your linear in your chaos or in your movement. There are other ways of working, and that feminist practice was really important to me, and it's really important to see it go on.
Who is archived? How do you feel about being archived? How do we approach archives through and explore them without demeaning them or trivializing them or maybe distorting or making these materials drift from the origin, the original sort of intentions of the artists themselves.
That is the difference with this archive. That actually it's about making things now that are looking back, but are actually thinking about how we can look back in the future. And I think because us as artists are coming into this space and not feeling excluded through classification or through how we have to move through the space, we're able to openly respond. And I think that also the transference of collaboration and not trying to take ownership of WOCI or ownership of anything that we see also comes through the spirit in which that material has been collected. We've always been open to continue to collaborate and to share what we do. And I think that's shown in the things that we make, because there's already a breaking down and a horizontalization of hierarchy through the nature of the visual material we make. You don't have to be an archivist, you don't have to be a PhD, you don't have to be anything. You just have to have eyes and be able to feel. And that's therefore an invitation for you to enter into, the RCAP archive or WOCI or Women's Art Library.
Well, I suppose thinking about the legacy of the Women's Art Library and how we kind of continue it, part of it is thinking about how we kind of have new curators and new people coming in who can continue what many people have done within the Women's Art Library. But also I kind of feel that it is already happening, because there is increasingly people interested in interacting with the Women's Art Library, and I don't feel like it's a Goldsmiths specific project. I think we're really lucky to have it as a home and in, kind of temperature controlled stacks, so the materials can be held safe. But I think it's actually in the interest of the kind of feminists who engage with the Women's Art Library. So for me, it's sort of the practicality of making sure people know it's here, and then also having the people who can facilitate the visits and the, looking at the information.
Actually, it's been out overnight, so maybe it's kind of flattened out.
So you can see a bit more of it.
Yeah. Catalogue in the slides, yeah. So this is this beautiful work that Flick has done about the table that the Women Artists Slide Library kind of started on, that she still has.
Oh, I'm so interested in tables.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, I've come up with something for Nirmal to pursue now. This is there is something about the table that.
Genesis,